Hi, I'm Dave Karger. Thanks for joining me tonight on TCM. Over the last several hours, I've been presenting movies about popular rock bands, but all of the bands in those films were fake. They were inspired by real groups, but invented for the movies. Up next is something different, a landmark film from 1964 about the most sensational actual rock band of the 60s, the Beatles. From director Richard Lester, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr make their film debut in A Hard Day's Night. This film was shot and released right when Beatlemania took hold. The movie premiered in London in July of 1964, just 5 months after the Beatles burst onto the scene in the U.S., with their first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Director Richard Lester later explained that the production was thrown together quickly in order to take advantage of the Beatles' newfound popularity because many people didn't think it would last. Lester and producer Walter Shenson wanted to strike while the iron was hot, so the film was shot in just 6.5 weeks on a budget of roughly $500,000. The Beatles were not trained actors, but they were expert performers, and Richard Lester gave them the freedom to be themselves and depart from the script when necessary. The result is a movie that feels spontaneous, as if we're just witnessing a day in the life of the Beatles as they prepare to film a concert on a TV variety show in England. Of course, in addition to the Beatles performing memorable and often hilarious scenes, they also performed some of their earliest hit songs, including I Should Have Known Better, Can't Buy Me Love, She Loves You, and the title song. From 1964, here are John, Paul, George, and Ringo in A Hard Day's Night. A Hard Day's Night marked the big screen debut of the Beatles, and it received 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Writing and Score. While it didn't win any Oscars, it did become an international hit that quickly led to a second Beatles musical, Help, which was released the following year. Both movies were directed by Richard Lester, an American who moved to England in the 1950s and began directing commercials and variety shows for television. That work brought him to the attention of Peter Sellers, and in 1959, Lester and Sellers directed an experimental sketch comedy piece called The Running, Jumping, and Standing Still film, which earned an Oscar nomination for Best Live-Action Short. It was Lester's irreverent work with Peter Sellers that caught the attention of the Beatles and led them to choose him to direct A Hard Day's Night. With other memorable films he directed in the 1960s and 70s, including A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Petulia, The Three Musketeers, and The Ritz. Up next, one of the most successful pop groups in history, ABBA, is the focus of a mockumentary from 1977.
Next on TCM, ABBA, the movie, then Without Lying Down, and later, The First Auto. TCM is built to last tonight.